I think this is going to be a different morning than the other ones, than the other forums have been. A chance for you to maybe get to know another parishioner that you don't know so well better, and to talk some about our worship. And so if you look at the piece of paper that you have before you, I'm suggesting that you find someone you don't know very well. Perhaps you're sitting next to them, but not someone you've known for 30 years. And then for 5 minutes, interview them, and then 5 minutes later, let them interview you. And the idea is to draw people out, to encourage them to tell a story. Ask them, if they make one sentence, then ask them, how did that happen? Or what did that mean? And so the question is, what was your best experience in worship at St. Paul's? And then the questions that come out of that are, what was going on? Who was there? What made the strongest impression? And the best experience in worship could be a service, or it could be a moment. It's totally what God brings into your mind. It's totally what you want to talk about. And then, why were you moved? Did it make you feel closer to God? I mean, is that why it was the best experience you've had? And in what way did it make you feel closer to God? And then, in a few words, what was important to you? Like 3 different words, or something that can easily be passed on. And then switch and let the other person be interviewed and do the same thing. Help them kind of put flesh on the story. And then after that question is done, we'll take time for each person who's here to briefly, in just a couple of words or phrases, describe the fundamental themes of the conversation. So why don't you choose somebody? And we'll begin with the first question. Good morning again. So I think now it's time. I hope I realize this is rushed. You could take 20 minutes to talk about what you're talking about, each of you. But we did really want to have the opportunity to have this experience, and so in order to do it in this amount of time, this is the way we need to be doing it. So I'm wondering, I had the privilege of talking with Bob, and he talked about being involved in a worship service at Maundy Thursday, and the part that, what the fundamental thing that held the most meaning to me was, what to him was being part of creating a setting where people could be moved. And the Holy Spirit could be very near. So I'm wondering if others of you could do the same. We could go around, and each one of you could very briefly say, in as many words as I did, what the person you interviewed said. If you could stand up and try and yell, that would be helpful. But if you can't, that's fine. Do you want to start?
Okay. The person I interviewed said that sometimes it was the silence, sometimes it was the music, sometimes the sermon, but he felt as though there was something greater than he present when he had this feeling. That's probably enough.
Thank you. Great. Nick, do you want to? You don't need to stand up.
The music and especially some of the new songs and hymns, these have a certain freedom to them. They feel a certain freedom.
Thank you.
In the silence that happens before the service, this was at a 10:30 service, just in that quiet moment, offering prayer to be open to the leading of the Holy Spirit and having that happen.
Okay, the next person, thank you.
I did Mary Lee. She talked also about a Maundy Thursday service and talked about sort of the iconic role of the deacon in the hand washing or foot washing service, and that's why we call it stole. That's why a deacon's stole is crossed, because it's meant to represent the towel that Jesus had and used on Maundy Thursday. So it was the connection of what we're doing now to back to the origins of Christianity.
Thank you. The next person?
I'm here.
Okay.
Pat mentioned the reading of the gospel down in the aisle, how that really reached her and struck a wonderful note, which she was very grateful for.
Thank you. So,
And I
go on.
had the pleasure of talking to Hope, who was referring to the funeral service that was held here at St. Paul for her husband, which she still glows when talking about and remembering. It was very moving for her.
Next person?
For Bill, it was basically the Christmas Eve service, which, after all the hype of leading up to Christmas, brought it back to what Christmas is really about.
So a sense of the nativity as
Right.
opposed to, Okay.
Well, actually, for Charlie, it's about the same thing. But the other thing that meant a lot to him was coming back to church and then getting more involved and adding meaning to his life.
The next person?
Guess that's me. For Ray, it was when his children got married at St. Paul's 25 years ago. And his son married a Catholic girl, and he realized then, God, it was kind of an ecumenical thing because it brought a lot of family and a lot of people of different faiths. And it was a very moving experience for him.
So it crossed over boundaries in a way.
Yes.
Okay.
I interviewed Ben, and Ben said he was brought closer to God, especially here at St. Paul's, when he had to get up and sort of bare his soul and tell everybody in the congregation why he comes to St. Paul's.
Thank you. Next?
Gloria said that she found the friendliness was wonderful in St. Paul's, and also the fact that the sermon is mainly based on Scripture.
Okay. Thank you.
And she didn't have time to interview me because I was out. But I think the main thing with me is coming in and being quiet in the area of the service.
So it's finding God's presence in the quiet. Thank you. Okay. Next person, yes.
Is on next. And I talked to Chip here, and we had a conversation about his entering the church here and being very involved.
Okay, so it's being able to check, it's being able to,
There's a sense of welcome.
okay. Okay,
And I interviewed Nancy, and it was very similar for her. She recalled the first time that she and her husband Clayton came in and sat behind George and Margaret Chamberlain, and again were welcomed and with great hospitality.
okay, thank you.
Well, my partner here was impressed by the sense of trust she has and the sense of community during the church service. And there is an experience of sort of letting go of more worldly concerns coming to church. a feeling of very positive energy in the process.
So maybe presence of the holy, is that?
I think
That's
so.
Yes.
I spoke with Whitney, and one of the most moving experiences he has is when he's a lector, when he's reading a lay reader. He finds that very meaningful. And another thing that works very well for him is dynamics in his relationships with others. He feels when he can speak from his heart, and he feels the strength of these connections here at St. Paul's.
Okay, thank you. Why don't we go across the aisle? Louis. Yes, Louis is next.
I've interviewed Steve Thomas, and his focus was particularly was the time where he had to come through and say what it meant to him,
What the church meant to him.
Worshiping at St. Paul's.
Mhm. Okay. Anne? Oh, wait, well,
No, Steve.
let's just go by Anne, we'll come back, okay?
Right. I interviewed Virginia Vincent, who is a new member of St. Paul's, but coming here, she felt that she had come home, that it was the same warm, closer to God feeling, so she felt that she had found the church where she belonged.
Thank you.
I interviewed Anne, and she felt that praying after communion was a very special time for her.
Okay, next.
I interviewed Lucy, and her inspiration was the deacons and how their calling has influenced her, and the way the deacons draw us out into the community is important.
Thank you. Lucy?
I spoke with Ed about a moment when he realized that someone he esteemed very highly was very sincere in their confession, and it made him realize the deep faith that that person carried, and how he needed to participate in that same searching.
So another word. So the sincerity of the confession led you toward in the same direction, or is that led you towards depth, towards a deeper examination of your life? Okay. Is that close enough?
Close.
Okay. Okay. Next person.
We didn't get very far.
Okay.
We just got started and it was over.
I'm sorry. Are there one or two words that participation of all the
Yeah, yes.
children, participation of all. Okay, next.
I interviewed Lewis, and he recalled when he was new here, and a conversation with Nick Smith, where Nick went into some detail about his ancestry, and it made Lewis feel welcomed and part of the organization.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
I talked with Pat, and she said the Easter service has been the most powerful for her. The beauty of the flowers in the church and the joy of spring.
Thank you.
Rick had an experience in which he was introduced to meditation. And following that, he felt that that became a central part of his faith and his worship life.
And the value of that is that it, so if you put it in like 2 sentences, 2 words, or?
I'd say that the meditation deepened his faith.
Thank you. Rick?
And Charles talked about an experience he had, actually, I guess it was in one of the small groups, where he was prayed for and he felt healed.
Thank you. Who's the next person?
I came in after the start of the service.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's right.
And I think some others maybe did too. Did you talk with someone? You talked with Ann?
Did I talk with Ann? I didn't get far. No, but found out that she had been Catholic. She's now joined us. I'm very happy.
Did you get
And,
far in the other direction?
Yeah, I talked briefly with Susie, and she felt like she came home to Episcopal Church after some time at First Parish. We tried it briefly. Yeah, so kind of a home.
Okay, so really coming home.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to just start doing this, okay?
I interviewed Lynn, and she said the most powerful day for her was the day that she and Edward were confirmed and reaffirmed.
And that, was it like the public commitment or feeling
Yeah.
close to God or? Okay, don't worry about it. Who's next? Barbara?
Tom said that he can't be too specific at one parish meeting, but that it's a combination of things that, and they do elevate him in spirit and with renewal of his faith.
Spiritual renewal?
And I interviewed Barbara, and she was very affected by the warmth and the influence and the spiritual magnetism of one person, Margaret Chamberlain.
Okay, who's the next person?
I interviewed John Barlingham, and we talked a little bit about worship, but then we got on to the place that he feels comfortable and really safe is in the men's group, and that starts with the worship.
So a place of safety, right?
I talked to Jean. Jean's most profound memories of the funerals. Some of the people where she really learned more about the people.
Okay. And is that a connection with the people, maybe, by learning more about them? Okay. Who's next? Yes. other. And the people who didn't have a chance to, please find someone that you don't know, you haven't known for 30 years. And again, we'll take 5 minutes. I'm wondering if it's possible to kind of conclude your conversations. Someone suggested I ring the bell, so I will. So in a way, I think you have an idea of what we will be doing this time, but I wonder if maybe starting with Terry, we could just go across the same way we've done, and if you could just say kind of the fundamental themes, or I hope you've enjoyed this conversation. I've always loved it when I've had the opportunity to kind of put myself into the future and see what was exciting. So, but if you could just take a few words to say the kind of the nitty-gritty, the fundamental values, or words that describe that time for the person you interview.
I'll have to do both because my partner had to leave for something else. One thing that we both talked about, and I think it was the common theme for us, was seeing a community of people here that is larger, and in particular includes many people in the youth, seeing more youth involved in lay leadership, seeing them as lectors, seeing confirmed youth as chalice bearers, more involved in what's going on every Sunday.
Thank you. And then the other person, you're two?
Well, we both did the same thing, actually.
Okay, good. All right, Nick?
In the Spirit-filled parish.
Thank you.
Spirit-filled.
Okay.
Spirit-filled parish.
Okay, Pam?
A mix of old people, new people, instruments beyond the organ.
Beyond the new organ.
Beyond the new.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to go?
Yeah, I think Ben and I sort of talked the same way, that to be blown away, we would see a church filled with a much younger congregation that was enthusiastic and involved a lot more with lay people in the church.
So, church filled with younger people
Yeah,
involved?
right.
Okay. Gloria?
That's basically what we were talking about too.
More young people,
Yeah.
and she said all generations.
Right. Okay.
And Ray pretty much expressed, we both felt, but we were a little bit at a loss, the struggle to get new people here. You know, what would the music have to be like? Sometimes that frightens me, but I guess that would have to change to attract young folks.
Perhaps, yes, Bill?
Okay, more young people and more involvement by a wider number of people in the parish.
In leading worship?
Yes, in every aspect of the church.
Deeper commitment, maybe.
Well, and I'll put a check next to all generations. Well, I'll do one that says more young people. Charlie?
Bill was looking for a dynamic priest who would involve everyone, as well as he had a great idea, and that is having the youth do a service, including the homily.
That's in the works.
Great minds think alike.
Okay, go on.
Hope and I envisioned a congregation of more young families with children and music, like Nick explained, beyond the organ. Particularly the guitar, the trumpet this morning, things like that, and continuation of involvement of lay people in all aspects of the service.
Okay?
All I say is, I did all that. I would love to hear guitar music.
Okay, great. Okay, Rodney.
Jim and I started talking, when we got to the music part, Jim was talking about the music that he heard in the old churches in England when he was there during the war, and how incredible the atmosphere, the history of being in a church with that much history, and what a grounding place it was when they came back from missions to have the church there as, you know, to go from war to being able to be in a church.
Right, so a church with a connection to the past, or to the history of the early church, or something like that?
Church with history that, you know, where people hundreds of years have sat in the same place.
Right.
Not to say by me.
Well, so there's continuity?
Yeah, you sat where someone had sat hundreds of years ago,
Right.
famous people.
Okay. Yes, okay, and then Rodney? No, Jim, Rodney, were you both?
We would just sort of talk about the same thing.
Okay,
I was listening, thought that it applied today, having a safe haven from the world to sort of the church.
great, thank you. Who's the next person? I can't quite tell.
Virginia.
Yeah.
And because she goes to the 8 o'clock service, said the same people would be there, but also some new people. The music, there isn't any music at the 8 o'clock,
Right.
so that wouldn't be changed. Involved in the service, she said there probably wouldn't be a great deal of change at the 8 o'clock. And the atmosphere is very friendly. And God's presence, in a few words, what's important to her, that God's presence would still be the same.
And Anne?
We were really saying much the same thing. I do think that I wanted to say that God's presence would, I'm not in favor of changing the structure of the interior.
Okay. Steve?
Oh, yeah, you want, go ahead. Well, I thought that there would be more young people involved, and the music would reflect that. At least we hope that was the case.
Okay, and I put that over here?
Yeah.
Okay. Steve?
And I thought that it would probably be that it would be less so than he did. I thought that going to 8 o'clock, and we seem to have a very geriatric congregation, and I thought that it probably still would be, but that we would take in at least some of the innovations that the younger people had brought upon us.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know that
Thank you. Did you have something to say?
No, I think I said it.
No, Steve.
Yeah, we talked about pretty much the same thing. I guess the only additional thing would be, you saw a variety of worship services, evening song, morning prayer, more than what we are doing now.
Okay.
And in addition to the young people, we saw reaching out and ministering to the senior community, of which I am part.
Okay, great.
Younger
Who's next?
I just wanted to speak to the music part of it.
Uh-huh.
I would imagine in 5 years that the addition would be all finished, and you'd have that completed. Therefore, you would have, as everyone has said before, more opportunity to enlarge the choir. And wouldn't it be wonderful to have a fully functioning organ? I mean, it'll be much improved in 5 years. Not that it really needs very much, but those are the kinks when you worked out.
Okay.
It'd be a great joy.
And did you interview somebody, or?
I did talk with them, but I spoke at a
Okay, all right. So let's, okay.
Next, all right. Well, in 5 years, we were imagining what Rip Van Winkle would think, and Whitney said to the question, who is there? He said, who is not here? And then for involvement in the service, he liked the idea of more youth involvement, but that generally he feels that the way the service is run is just fine.
Okay.
And what he says that the atmosphere of the congregation at that time will be very upbeat, but have the usual variety of experience. And to say what was important at the time, he says that freshness of leadership is what's important 5 years from now.
Thank you. Next person.
Father mentioned that there'll be many new families here. The Sunday school will certainly be busy, overflowing. This is really just the sense of the growth that you feel going on right now will continue. And the music will go on, probably very much as it is today, although probably the I'm editing, will be more increasingly skillful in following new music, and because of their experience in singing. But it does, the music will go well, is the prediction.
Thank you.
And again, there was the point of the involvement of the young people, which is hoped to be expanded, increasing. Atmosphere of the congregation, by and large, optimistic, helpful to each other. There's a wonderful spirit of charity. I'm editing again a little bit. I can't, it's hard to separate.
Well, you know, actually, that's a good amount.
And what was important, in a few words, at that time, the outreach to the community, and to the larger community, but also the ever increasing sense of community within the church. Undoubtedly, that will be stronger and better as time goes on.
Thank you. Chick, are you next?
Yes. The continuing theme in what Nancy said was commitment. She was hoping that the people who were there would be more committed, that there would be more participation in the singing and in the music, and that in the service itself, more lay people would take a part in becoming lectors.
Absolutely.
And Eucharistic.
We need lectures at 8 o'clock, right? Yeah. Okay, and
He pretty much said it all.
he did. Okay.
Charles and I, well, after the first question, who is here, and we agreed that we both hoped that we were here. And then we got off to just sort of a general discussion. I think the main thrust of Charles' comments had to do with more passion, I think, more the spirit of Christ, more open witnessing in the church.
Thank you.
And Rick made what I thought was an eloquent case for additional periods of silence during our service, and particularly with attention to the time, well, in addition to that, attention to the time before the service,
Right.
to have silence for those who are gathering their thoughts and having their own personal prayers.
Yeah.
And pointed out something that was meaningful to him, that when Jonathan Appleyard was here, on a couple of occasions he came in and simply kneeled before the service, and that had a very effective, it was an effective experience for everybody, because they really
Excellent.
gathered in
Good
the
idea.
spirit with that.
Yeah.
Pat and I, as longtime 8 o'clock members, resent the geriatric label. But we had many of the same ideas. We had too many to mention, but maybe more services that are alternate services, respecting the long-time parishioner who loves the quiet of the 8 o'clock service, and not having undue changes, but having people be more open to new ideas.
Next. Why don't we start back over here again?
I have to go greet,
Well,
excuse me.
please, oh, okay, do something, okay, maybe Ann can speak for both.
So I'll speak for both of us. Susie was mentioning a greater sense of involvement from all members of the congregation, and also continued growth of the missions of the small groups, particularly her interest is the Earth Care Commission. And mine was kind of a mix of old and new, and trying to find a balance. That balance will hopefully be achieved.
I just need to go back for a second. Who spoke just before Ann? She left. Who spoke before that? Rick.
Lynn.
Openness to, there was something you said at the very end about the 8 o'clock service.
Just openness to change.
Okay, fine.
Yes.
Okay, go on. Pat?
First thing Lynn mentioned was
We're just really running out of time.
that
so-
the church will be insulated and we won't freeze to death.
Thank you.
And that I think, as a lot of others have said, that we'll have more inclusiveness, better mix in all the services of old and young. And so we learn from each other that there might be some added services, like a Sunday afternoon. There'd be more options, more modern services, as well as we both would like morning prayer more often, and those beautiful prayers.
Okay.
I think that pretty well covers.
Who's next? Barbara.
Well, I'll add one thing. I think a theme here was really involvement by the people who are here, as opposed to like passive participation or observing.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I think that's your son. Wider involvement of people in the church. Okay. Yes, Claude.
We had a good combo here, Eileen and myself. We're both Catholics when we started, and you can thank the Catholic Church while we're here. And no, Leslie didn't make me come here. But Eileen feels that Sunday is a very special day. It's a special day not because you go to church early, it's a special day for the kids. And it goes beyond the service. And how do we carry that forward? 5 years from now, I think everybody's, yeah, we'd love to have more kids. They're a lot of fun, especially when you're a grandparent, because you can give them back to the parents. But how do we expand that? I really don't know. We've got to do more things for them to do. But that's where we see what's happening here, is to try to expand it beyond the service that we have in the church.
All right, thank you. You don't need to stand up.
Okay. I think my overall
Who else?
Yes. And I hope that the energy that we have right now in the self-study group carries us into the next 5 years, and that we come together and unified and we have a vision to outline at the end of the self-study.
Great, thank you. Is there anybody else? Okay, I wrote down these things while you were interviewing each other as common things that people found in worship that was meaningful to them: a sense of welcome of God's love, the presence of the Holy Spirit, people speaking from the heart, which was a sign of freedom and trust, calling to a deeper spiritual life, joy, all people participating, and a connection with the life of Jesus and the early church. Does that? And it seemed to me, with looking at these other things. And then I think if we looked at these together, what would we see? We would see probably more people active in worship, more people of all ages in the church, a deep sense of God's Spirit, music that is a blend of old and new, that includes guitars and trumpets in addition to, and up to perhaps other instruments beyond our new organ. And then there will be, God's presence will be the same as it is, that there will be a sense of what we love about today will be there tomorrow, and there will be today's energy and vision. Are there other things that, music, outreach would be another thing. I think that's pretty much a sense of openness to change, a willingness to accept change that different people might bring. I mean, every time you welcome someone in, you welcome another point of view. And so openness to welcome has many different levels to it. And then different services. Is that about it? And a better sound system.
How about Bowdoin College? I'd like to see more contacts with Bowdoin students.
We do a compline service there now. We've done 3.
In their chapel.
At 9:45 on Sunday night with incense. It's supposed to be, they really are connected with the holy and the spiritual mystery. So that's what it's just sung. It's very quiet. It's dark. There are candles all around. It's really quite lovely. And you're welcome to come.
How many students could turn up for that?
Not a whole lot yet. 10 the first time. The next time was the Super Bowl.
We picked up a Bowdoin Orient this week, and that service is not on their calendar.
Can you talk to Crystal about that? Okay? All right. Is there something you want to say?